Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 73. Cinematography is infinite in its possibilities, much more so than music or language. Conrad Hall.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's episode is sponsored by VideoBlocks. Now, VideoBlocks is a subscription-based stock media company that has unlimited amount of stock footage that you can download, and it is super affordable. I use this on all of my projects. It is my go-to place for stock footage. They have over 115,000 HD video clips, After Effects templates, motion graphic backgrounds, and cinegraphs. And on average, most people spend about $1 per download over the course of the year. It has the same amount of content and same kind of footage that is available on other more expensive platforms. And the best thing about it is that is 100% royalty free. Even if you cancel your subscription, you have unrestricted usage of it for your personal or commercial projects. That means films, commercials, anything you want to use it for. And you keep the download and maintain all usage rights forever. So it's completely unrestricted, guys. So if you want to get a Indie Film Hustle discount, head over to videoblocks.com/podcasts, and you can get an entire year for $99. That is an insane value, guys. So definitely check it out. So I wanted to thank you guys for the wonderful, warm reception that the Indie Film Hustle Film School has been having. Been getting a lot of downloads. A lot of people are really loving it. So thank you so much for going and checking out all our new courses and all the courses that we've curated for you to help you guys further down the line on your filmmaking journey. And as this special discount, you get 30% off of a ton of our courses. All you have to do is click on any of the links and use the code FilmHustle30. And again, if you want to check it out, indiefilmhustle.com/film school. Now, today's special guest is Ernesto Lomeli. He is a cinematographer and has an amazing story of how he's become a cinematographer, who he's working with, who his business partners are, the kind of gear he works with. He is easily one of the more gear-heavy, extensive gear freaks that I know of. But yet he understands that it's just gear. But he loves his new gear and he knows and plays with all of it. So he gets to play with all the toys. I've shot with Ernesto on multiple projects over the years, and I just love his energy. He's one of the most mellow guys you've ever met in your life. He is super awesome and extremely talented cinematographer. He does a lot of work, a lot of commercial work, short form work, music videos, and he travels the freaking world. I mean, every time I see him on Facebook somewhere, he's somewhere else in the world, seeing a passport or seeing out of window of an airplane. He's always traveling, and he's a very worldly cinematographer, and he's done a lot of good work. So I thought he'd be a really nice guest to have on the show and really explain to you guys a little bit about gear, a little bit about the process of cinematography and working with low budgets, which he does do often. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. So I wanted to bring him on the show for you guys. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Ernesto Lomeli. I would like to welcome to the show Ernesto, a good friend of mine and the most knowledgeable gearhead I know in regards to film gear and all things cinematography. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hello.
He's very quiet. Hopefully he will liven up as the interview goes on. No, I'm joking. So Ernesto and I go way back. We've shot a bunch of projects together, one music video and a bunch of commercials and stuff like that. So I love working with Ernesto. He's awesome. And every time we always work together, we always brings out a lot of his toys, and then he'd tell me about all his other toys back at home. So I wanted to bring him on the show to kind of talk about his perspective on being a cinematographer and all that kind of good stuff, and gear. I wanted to talk about gear because there's nobody, honestly, that I know better, especially the dog in the background, know more about gear than Ernesto. So are you ready, sir?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what made you become a cinematographer in the first place, Ernesto?
Well, I kind of decided to do this freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big computer geek, and at the same time, I was a big still photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time in the darkroom and I used to geek out on cameras and lenses, and at the same time, build my little Pentium computer and geek out on that and log on to BBS systems and all kinds of stuff like that. So I think they kind of just went hand in hand. And when I actually decided to I graduated high school a year early, and then I kind of spent that year kind of traveling and working and making money. And then eventually, when I had enough money for art school, I ended up going thinking I would do photography, but it's just kind of boring because you kind of just work by yourself. I remember the first assignments were like, go do this and go do that. And I didn't really have anybody to work with. I didn't really think that was fun. And I took some indie film or intro to filmmaking classes, and they were really cool because it was all group stuff. And it was super techy and really relied on your knowledge of the technology and of filmmaking at the same time. So it was kind of cool. It was creative and technical, and you get to collaborate with people, and I'm kind of a people person too, so it kind of fit.
Nice. And you went to AFI, right?
Went to AFI, but first I actually went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, which at the time was one of the better film schools back 15 years ago. They had a really good inventory of 35 millimeter cameras, and there just wasn't that many schools shooting 35. It was kind of the new big deal school. It was before New York Film Academy. I mean, at that time it was AFI, but that was a graduate school only. There was Chapman, or no, I lied. It was before Chapman really had a film program. It was Brooks. There was the film school in Cuba. There was NYU, and then there was the Wuj Film Academy.
Now, the film school in Cuba, I've heard, is insane.
Yeah, it is. And but for some reason, I was attracted to San Francisco. At the time, I did high school in San Diego, and my older brother had graduated from San Francisco State. I had friends that lived up there, so it just seemed like a good transition to move up there as a 18-year-old by yourself, and not to be too far from anything. So
you're kind of like a vagabond in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so it seemed pretty cool.
What was your experience at AFI? Because that's obviously such a prestigious school.
It was funny. The whole time I was at the Academy of Art, all I was looking forward to was finishing so that I could have a portfolio prepared enough to be able to apply to AFI. But at the time, in hindsight, I didn't realize how hard our little year of people at the Academy of Art, believe it or not, because especially in art school, like Art Center and things like that, your freshman class is 400 deep. But I remember in our film program, actually walking at graduation, there was only 30 of us, 35 of us. So it was a very close-knit, incestuous, very competitive class that ended up graduating. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the people I graduated are very good working cinematographers right now.
Nice.
And, I think maybe I lucked out, but the year I went there, I feel like we were one of those classes that just one of those outlier classes that just kind of kicked butt. And it was great because every single week, all we would do is try to up each other's projects, and we would just jump from each other's jobs back and forth, and everybody would just work on everybody's projects nonstop. And we were always trying to one up each other with how cool and how crazy and the lighting and, how many favors we were able to pull and, how far we were able to bullshit our permit and this and that. And by the time I finally got admitted to AFI, I realized that most of the people I had already gone to school with and all of these things that I had worked so hard for the last few years, AFI kind of felt like I had already done that. We had pushed ourselves so hard in undergrad, so hard. By the time I made it to AFI, it was kind of redundant. Don't get me wrong, there were still some amazing things. Like Stephen Lighthill was an amazing chair. Bill Dill is the man. Even to this day, I will always place an highlight because I'm scared of Bill Dill yelling at me.
I know. I noticed that when we worked together that you actually put an eye light on everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, you get yelled at it about it so hard. But eye lines, highlights, things like that were things I learned at AFI. But the reality is, after my first year, I didn't really see the need to continue. And my teachers themselves even told me, they're like, "Hey,
You're good.
if you're getting offers for work, you should go work. Don't spend another year and another, $60-something thousand hanging out here." They're like, "Go do it." And it's like, all right, you're right. And so that's what I did. I never went back for my thesis. I basically finished everything except my thesis.
So the one fascinating thing you told me, a story that you told me, is that you actually partnered up with the Academy Award winning Guillermo Navarro as a partner. And I'd love for you to tell everybody that story because it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it was actually quite funny. I was working as a camera assistant here in LA for a few years, and a producer I was working with, we were shooting a Bushmills commercial, and the producer was Cuban. And believe it or not, I mean, although you see a lot of Mexican cinematographers winning Academy Awards, there's not really that many Hispanic, Latino, or Mexicans that are actually working in the film industry.
Trust me, I know.
in proper positions. I mean,
right.
Besides security and crafty and catering, I mean, the truth is, I mean, when people say that, when you say you're in camera department or, you're the DP, people are like, "Oh, really?" Like, "Oh, that's interesting." So at the time, people really do kind of want to help each other out. It's like it's like an immigrant kind of just mentality of everybody, a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. So, producer I did that job with, he was doing a job up in San Francisco with Guillermo, and Guillermo had just had a hernia operation. He needed an operator, and he's like, "Hey, if you want to come up and do this job," he's like, "the money sucks, but you might get to work with somebody really cool." And he told me who it was, and I was like, "Yeah, dude, you don't even have to pay me. I'll be there."
Of course.
I was always, he won the Academy Award for Pan's Labyrinth, but I'll be honest with you, one of the most amazingly shot movies I've ever seen is The Devil's Backbone. And just those sequences with those kids in that orphanage, the bomb in the courtyard, it's
gorgeous. It's gorgeous stuff.
It really is. It really, really is. So,
for those people who don't know who we're talking about, Guillermo Navarro has worked a lot with Guillermo del Toro. He's done most of his movies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
he actually shot his first film.
Exactly. So that's who we're talking about when we say Guillermo Navarro, for those who are not in the know. So continue, sir.
So anyways, we ended up going up to San Francisco. At the time, I had already been working in LA, working as an assistant, working as a low budget indie cinematographer. And at that time, I had always liked to own equipment because I'm kind of a techie geek kind of nerd guy.
You're the ultimate, sir. I've been in your place, sir. I just drool every time I'm there.
And through film school, besides working on set, I had worked at a rental house there for years. So it was just one of those things that everything just went hand in hand, where it's just, you want to learn how to get the shot, you ask to borrow that lens or that adapter or this or that. So gear for me was just, it's like I always looked at it, or at least in my head, maybe this is how I justified it, but I always thought of it as, being a carpenter and knowing your tools. It's
and having
every saw is different, every chisel is different, everything has its purpose. And I never understood people that will just always go out and rent something different all the time. It's like you have to use it 5, 6, 7, 8 times before you like really get a feel for it. Like you really, really get a feel with how that lens is going to flare. How does it really look on a face? How does it contrast? When does it lose contrast? And every lens on every camera, on every sensor, on every film stock will act completely different. And it's just this, it's like being a chef and, being asked to cook with a spice rack, a set of spices for the first time, and you're expecting to be fantastic at it. It's like, no, you have to know how to use everything.
You have to know how to use those spices because a little bit too
Yeah,
much of this or a little not enough of that won't make it work.
that, and the dynamic of the film industry is changing, and so
Mm-hmm.
everybody wants a deal. So you being able to come out as a package with equipment and as a starving cinematographer, obviously, they never have money for your labor and they barely have any money for gear. So when you combine those two, you kind of
Always work.
eke out a living.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're not really making a profit, but at least you're just working, and somebody's literally paying you to practice your craft.
Right. Right.
And I found that invaluable. So that was my approach. I worked through camera department, but at the same time, in parallel, I was doing the indie film hustle.
Exactly. Nice plug, sir. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So you and Guillermo are partners in a company, and you guys work together and have a ton of cameras that you work with together, correct?
Yes. So Guillermo owned a lot of film cameras. I owned a couple digital cameras, and we decided to team up right as kind of digital revolution was really happening in
The Reds, right?
The Reds. We were about to transition into the Epics.
Mm-hmm.
The Alexa was just about to come out, and so we started working together. And it was, he has a world of knowledge, storytelling wise and visually, and I got lucky enough to be kind of the guy who knows. My breadth of knowledge visually is good, but obviously nowhere near as good as a master like him. But
Mm-hmm.
I did have a pretty good bridge towards that, and technically what is coming out, and I think we made really good partners. And over the last few years, we've been kicking butt.
Nice.
Him doing his movies, and me working my way through a commercial roster.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, he had that same mentality of like, why am I going to make other people money if I could get a loan or hustle it hard or do this and that? It's like, well, I'm gonna have my own tools. And, we both came from that same world. Maybe it's like a pull yourself up from your bootstraps kind of immigrant mentality or something.
You know what? I'll tell you. I think being the guy who's hustled all his life, and coming from a market like Miami, which is, I'm sure you've shot in Miami, so it's not LA as far as a market's concerned. So, in order to be able to make a living, you've got to do things that you're not. You're not normal. It's not taught that way. So like with your gear, mine with my gear was post. So I would have all the gear for post and then sell myself out or sell the suite out, and they wouldn't pay my time, but they'd pay for the suite and so on and so forth. Because that was kind of the way everything was going. But it's a special mentality. It's a hustle. No question.
It's a hustle, but at the same time, it's like you're never really trying to make money. You're trying to make enough to pay for everything. But what you really want to do is just get the next cool project.
Right, exactly. And sometimes that knowledge and that gear will help you get to that point, which leads me right to my next question. You got to shoot some second unit on Pacific Rim. Is that correct?
I actually did the epilogue and the title sequence for background.
Right. And that must have been amazing to work on such a huge budget.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. As they were finishing up the film, they needed a way to explain this world.
Yeah.
And my friend, Matthew Cullen, who's partners with Guillermo del Toro in a production company called Murata, they tasked Murata and intern Matt to direct this prologue as to how we got to this world of Pacific Rim in 2 or 3 minutes, and explain the kaiju and explain how did it happen and what worked and what didn't work, and why we are where we are now, and trying to do it in a graphic, beautiful, intense way that's not just text in 2 to 3 minutes wasn't easy. And the film was being market tested, and as they were screening it and asking, and the studio was asking for changes and this and that because certain story aspects weren't making sense, all of a sudden we would be sent out fly around the world and shoot, a recreation of a riot sequence somewhere in Thailand, or, shoot slums in the Philippines so that later we could comp in giant robots in them. Things like that, and basically recreating the backstory. And at the same time, we got to have a really cool adventure, basically.
Now, you've obviously worked on a lot of commercials, a lot of music videos, and worked on you haven't shot a feature yet, but you're mostly doing commercials and music videos at this point, correct?
Yeah, it's mostly, I'm 33 years old, which is still pretty young.
God, you are young. I didn't know you were that young.
Yeah.
You piss me off, sir. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I'm, as much as I would love to be somewhere else and be doing, movies and this and that, I feel like I got very lucky with circle of people that trust me very well, that they themselves have come up over the years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, I am where I am because when I was an assistant, the production managers and the coordinators, we were all hustling together. And as the years went by, they moved up and I moved up. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I have a job. Do you want to do it? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And because there's a sense of trust. And then after a few other jobs, somebody else trusts you, and your circle just starts growing through osmosis, your reputation. And of course your body of work, but it's pretty rare for somebody to hire me just from something they saw on my website. It's always they heard of me through
word of mouth.
Through word of mouth, or they were a client on a job, or they were they were helping produce a job, or they were doing something on a job. And when they got their job, they're like, hey, are you interested? And slowly but surely your Rolodex just starts growing and growing and growing and growing. And it's a snowball effect, and as long as you keep doing good work and have a good attitude, it's just going to keep growing. But I'm in commercial land. That's my roster.
Right.
Those are my people. That's my clique. I'm in the clique of commercials.
Well, what I find fascinating about you is you're probably the most mellow man I know. And on set, no matter how crazy it is, you are the most mellow man I know. So it's fascinating to work with you in that sense, because a lot of people aren't like that on film sets, as I'm sure you know.
It's funny because I've worked for other DPs that were kind of crazy, and after one job, I just kind of, even not consciously, you just kind of go, I don't know if I want to do that job again with you.
Yeah, right.
They call you for a job, and like anything, they're like, there's, especially before I was in the union, it was, you'd always be like, well, how much money is there, and what is it? And like, I don't really want to do this with you. Like, I am all right. I think I'd rather not be sad all day. I want to kill myself after, you feel dirty after doing a job with somebody that mistreats you,
right?
That's stressed out, that's mistreating other people. It's just like, why am I even here? And it's like, it goes back to that same, same mentality. It's like, why are you doing this? It's because you love it, because you want to have fun. And, when you want to achieve a certain position and a certain job title, like, or responsibility, like you want to be a cinematographer, but you're pulling focus, or you're loading magazines, or you're downloading cards, you can't help but feel, especially when you're working with somebody you don't respect, you're like, man, I could do their job and I could do it so much better. There's no more frustrating thought that could enter your mind to ruin your day than that. And I was very careful not to put myself in those positions, because I saw my own mental state being poisoned, and I didn't like that. So I got lucky enough to work with really cool people, even in low positions. I didn't really fucking care.
Right.
Because in the end, I was working with some of the people that I really respected. And the bigger and the bigger and the bigger the DPs and the directors I got to work under, the more and more I realized they're really cool. And they're confident, because this is like the 500th commercial they've shot.
Yeah.
And they've already done this Budweiser commercial 20 times, over the last 40 years or 30 years. And like, it's it's just another day in the office. It's like an athlete going out to play a game. It's just the big game. They're like, yeah, it is, but it's what I do. And it really changes people's attitude on set. It's like, oh wow, we're really behind, and we're waiting on art department, and the truck hasn't landed, and the light's in the wrong place because we're 3 hours behind, and originally this is going to be backlit, but now it's frontlit, and the mentality for all these people that I always worked with there is just like, well, we'll just figure it out. It's not my fault. So right. I'm just going to figure out the best way to just do it and not lose sleep over it, and it's a great mentality. And, attitude, if you've ever been on a bad film shoot, if you've ever been on a bad movie, attitude is all you have. It really carries along the entire job. And it trickles from the top. It doesn't. Good attitude doesn't trickle up. It trickles down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the PA with a good attitude is not going to make James Cameron not do what he does.
Not going to change the shoot. But a director or a DP with a shitty attitude will definitely poison a department or a whole crew and make a lot of people really angry.
Yeah.
Or frustrated or not even want to be there.
Because it's a tough business in general just to do the job sometimes, being on set for 12 hours, 14 hours and having to do, it's a high stress, high pressure situation sometimes, and having, toxic.
Because eventually it just kind of turns into a routine. It's just another day.
But when you have the right people, when you don't have the right people.
Yeah. It's all about perspective. And
correct.
It's all about projecting an attitude. And sometimes you just got to let stuff not get to you. And if you are lucky enough to realize that you're actually making a living doing this and people are hiring you, you realize you're kind of in a really good position. So it's like, so what if the sun really isn't where you want it to be? You know what? We'll just figure it out. Maybe I could talk the director into just shooting it all in tight lenses, or, maybe we can just wait a little bit longer and get that nice, beautiful light and sunset, or maybe I could ask them to turn it around the other way, or things like that.
Just figure it out.
You always got, I mean, that's just the thing. You got to just figure it out.
Now, what is your favorite camera? Do you have a favorite camera to shoot, and why?
You know what? I get asked this a lot.
I'm sure.
There's this inherent virus.
Yes. I'm waiting for it. Go for it.
People are camera racist.
Yeah. That's the best terminology I've ever heard. Camera racism.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
People, especially agency, camera department, assistants, directors, people are camera racist. And it's because for some reason they believe other people's propaganda and bullshit.
Right. It's like computer racism. It's like computer Mac versus PC, or editing racism.
I compare it to like Chevy versus Ford kind of
stuff,
kind of mentalities. It's like they do the same thing.
They get you from
point. Different.
Yeah, they have different flavors, but
they're different flavors. So I mean, I'm obviously in a very unique position in that we own everything. So. But, most people, they rent everything, so it doesn't matter. There's just this thing that happens where people saw, and it all started, I think, with the behind-the-scenes featurettes on DVDs. It wasn't just American Cinematographer and things like that. It became mainstream when you would see the behind-the-scenes of movies that being shot, and, you'd get a commentary, and that. But more and more people were watching it because it was, it was part of these like beautiful DVD featurettes, these bonus features, and it'd be like, oh, we're shooting on this with these lenses, and we're shooting on this with this film stock or these lenses, and all of a sudden you get clients asking you like, well, I want to shoot on this.
Right. Oh no, and let's not even get into the genius marketing that is Red Camera.
Well, I'll be honest with you. They're all the same, and I know the Red guys pretty well.
No, I'm not talking about the cameras. I'm talking about the genius marketing. Like what Red did, they kind of ambushed the film industry.
Because they really were doing something different, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
There's many times where I get asked from a client to shoot a project on something that is completely the wrong tool.
Because that's oh yeah.
They're like, oh, we need to run and gun a lot. We're going to be jumping to 3 different countries. We're going to be kind of just landing and scouting. Maybe we could shoot some sunset plates while we're there. And then we're going to need to do this and that. And you're like, okay. Like, and I want to shoot it all anamorphic on Alexa. You have no idea. You just asked for an 80-pound camera with everything. And like, just the batteries to power that for the day, because we're not going to have access to power. Right. We're going to be hauling around 200 pounds worth of batteries. It's like, it's not the right tool for that job.
It's like and I always tell people, it's like telling your plumber what plunger to use. Like, it's his job to know what tools to do the job with.
Just tell me what you want it to look like. And
right.
And it's like, I'm going to be the asshole who's going to have it on my shoulder for 12 hours.
Right. There's that.
And it's so silly.
It is. And I get it. I get it on my end too. Like before, like, Final Cut versus Avid versus Premiere. Now DaVinci versus Baselight. I'm like, guys, just please, let me, what do you want? Do you want pretty pictures? I'll make them pretty. Just,
obviously, sometimes there are certain requirements.
Of course, either workflow issues or things like that, and that's understandable.
Resolution,
right.
Frame rate, size,
mm-hmm.
And there's always something. But I feel a lot of people are like hardcore Red users
mm-hmm.
or hardcore Alexa users, and they would not even dare, use the other one. It's like, here's something that people don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
That beautiful set of lenses that, they use to shoot X movie on X camera
mm-hmm.
is going to look completely different if you use those same lenses on a different sensor.
Of course.
And the way you light it.
Or in a film plane, for that matter.
Every single lens CCD
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
combo gives completely different images. A set of Cooks are going to flare one way on an Alexa, another way on a Phantom, another way on film, and another way on Red.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. Certain characteristics will be there,
right?
But
it's just different. It's just a different. It's completely different.
Yeah.
I've been a Red guy for a while, but I know, and I've shot on Alexa. I've worked with Alexa Project. I've worked on Blackmagic. There's so many different cameras, DSLRs, all sorts of different things. You just kind of have to, if you hire a good DP, just let them choose the proper tool, as long as it works for the workflow and that you're able to handle that workflow and that conversation is had. Because I'm coming from the post end. If you're working on a laptop and they give you 8K, probably not a good idea. Yeah,
and I mean, I've done jobs where I've been really lucky to sometimes work on these like video installation wall pieces. Like
mm-hmm.
we did the Centennial for IBM.
Mm-hmm.
We did this beautiful installation piece at Lincoln Center a few years ago. Last year we shot the film that's the headquarters of Visa. So we shot this beautiful around the world piece. But like the Visa job, I think the final deliverable on that was 12K in a 3:1 aspect ratio.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Good Lord.
At the time,
that's a beast.
Like, well, we want to shoot Alexa. It's like,
no. Not happening. Not today.
The wrong tool for the job, because you have such a specific post requirement. So we ended up shooting 6K on the Dragon with a custom resolution ratio to use every single pixel we did in a 3:1 ratio, knowing that it was going to be tile stacked, and even then they were going to have to duplicate pixels and stuff. But
good Lord. Now you're getting into a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm pretty techie with this
Sure,
stuff.
Of course.
But those, that's one of those things. It's like the right tool for the job kind of thing.
Now, do you have a favorite lens package that you use? Or is it a preferred lens package you use?
Right now, I think for the last 2 years, I've kind of really been in love with my set of uncoated Cooks.
Oh, uncoated cooks. Okay, nice. Can you explain? Can you explain to everybody what a coated cook is and an not coated? Because I remember when I was in your place when you were talking about it, or you had just gotten them. It's one of the two,
Um,
and they're
so
gorgeous.
cooks are obviously these beautiful handmade lenses with this long lineage.
Mm-hmm.
They're a set of optics that have been around since they made telescopes
Right.
in England. What was it? Tyler Hop Cook.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you ever hear old movies, the old Pancros, people would, they would call it the 1 inch, the 2 inch, the 3 inch
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lenses. That's how we used to do focal lengths based on the length of the actual lens, because there was only one set of lenses in Hollywood.
Right.
So bring out the 1 inch lens, bring out the 2 inch,
Right.
25, 50, a 75, that kind of thing. So they have this very classic look, but they tend to be quite warm, and on digital sensors, I find them to be overly warm. So Cook did this brilliant thing with a set of their mini S4s where they sold the front element with the coatings on the front elements before they applied the anti-reflective coating on it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you shoot with a set of Zeisses, or if you shoot with a set of Canons or whatever, especially on the Zeisses, I remember when we were coming up, like the super speeds were still kind of the lenses.
Mm-hmm.
They would have the T coatings on,
Right.
and that was a really big deal because they would flare a certain way. You could shoot, into the sun. You could shoot headlights. You could do things like that, and the image wouldn't fall apart. And it was these amazing coatings that Zeiss had designed that hold contrast really well in high contrast situations, or would hold a flare and keep contrast. The problem that happens is, as light overwhelms a lens, you tend to lose contrast, which makes the image look soft, or you lose any detail in the image. The light just bounces back and forth in between all the different elements of glass, and it just creates pollution, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they coat these lenses with these special coatings, so the light kind of only travels in one direction. When it wants to bounce back, it gets absorbed or deflected, and it doesn't really pollute the image very much. So that's where you get these beautiful sharp flares. But Cook decided to try doing an homage to an older look. When they first marketed these lenses, they marketed them as the rebirth of the Pancros, which was their first generation of cinema lenses. So they decided to sell a version with the front elements without coatings, to kind of give it that softer, kind of more flary, classic look. And I really like them because it's new lenses with kind of a middle ground old look. And I don't know, I've really fallen in love with them. But at the same time, I shoot with everything.
Right.
But those are kind of the ones they're just always on the truck. They're just always with me. Well, that's one of the beauty of owning gear too. It's like, sometimes you're going to need a big long, the way the day is going to go, you're going to be on a dolly on a long zoom, and you're just going to spray it down every scene because you have celebrity talent. They're going to do the lines 3 times and whatever, and you just need to shoot the wide, medium, and tight without your schedule's so tight you can't afford to 5 minutes to flip a lens and recalibrate everything. It's just, you just got to go.
Now
There'll be a time when you'll have a big zoom, but I always keep a case of primes in the back, just in case.
Now, what's a good zoom? Like if you were going to rent a zoom or something like that, in your opinion?
I don't know. There's so many, once again.
Your flavor, sir.
I'm an Optimo guy.
Okay.
But so is, I think, everybody in the industry. I think 90% of everything you see on television is shot on a set of Optimos.
Got it. And that's a pretty expensive lens, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well, they make quite a big variety, but yes, they are very expensive because they're very complicated and very precise, and they're workhorses.
They just last.
They just freaking last. It's a precision piece of equipment that gets thrown in a case, tossed in the back of a van, slammed onto a camera, handheld, run around, push through places. You're in the forest. You're in the jungle. You're dangling.
It's hot. It's cold. Yeah.
It's hot. It's cold. Some idiot doesn't know how to use it. Some other guy really knows how to use it. Like, it's just one of those things that it's just, they're just so well made. But I'll be honest with you, almost all lenses are pretty darn durable nowadays.
It depends. I mean, obviously depends on if you're looking at the higher end stuff. Like, I mean, I have a set of Rokinons, which is just a little set that I bought for my little shooting that I do here and there. Nothing that I would do for a client. But and those I always look at. They're metal, but they're not. I wouldn't rent them out. Let's just put it that way. They're not going to last.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with film equipment is you just have to understand you get what you pay for.
Yep.
And there's no you're not being screwed. People aren't charging you 5 times as much as the Chinese version just because they're trying to make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, a lot of this equipment is still, even though it's CNC, it's small batches, and it took somebody a long time to figure out how to make it. And it's a company with very few employees and things like that. And no matter how expensive you think it is, it's barely making them any money. They're doing it out of passion, like Zeiss. Their cinema division is less than 1% of the company.
Yeah, because they do so many other kind of optics.
If you just take into account microscopes that they make for the medical industry,
yeah,
I mean, just there alone, just optics for telescopes, optics for military use. I mean, it's so much bigger. Yet they still keep their cinema division
because I love it.
Their photography division. It's kind of like the race car team.
Right. It's not a profitable thing, but it's a prestige thing.
It's a prestige thing.
Yeah.
And the truth is, they really do develop some really interesting technologies with coatings and mechanics and things like that through their cinema division that later gets incorporated into other things. But it's their race team. That's what it is.
So I always like talking to cinematographers about this question because it's kind of a touchy subject because you're a professional and you work with obviously professional high-end cameras. What do you think of the DSLR movement and DSLRs in general? I'll tell you my point of view after you tell me yours.
Well, when we started working when the 5D first came out.
Sure.
And once again, it goes back to the whole other people telling you what to do, what you should do your job on. So we would get agencies saying, we want to shoot on a 5D.
Oh, Jesus.
Like the most amazing thing shot on YouTube.
Just analyze that comment again. Like, we saw the most amazing thing shot on the 5D on YouTube. I'm like, really?
Yes. And they go, oh, and it's cheap and it's this and that. It's like, yes, but you want me to be able to shoot super shallow depth of field, run and gun. You want to be able to see it. You want to be able to have the director see it. You want to have a wireless feed to you 500 feet away at all times. You want to be able to feed audio into it. You want to be able to, and all of a sudden, that $2,000 camera that's renting for $150 a day has 40 grand worth of things attached to it. And a $50,000 lens.
Just to make it work.
Just to make it work at the tempo that you need to on a professional set where time is money.
Oh, God, that's such a great point of view.
So it was just so ridiculous. And we all knew it was ridiculous except the client. And they were just loving it. And they would eat their own, like they would believe their own hype.
Right.
And they're like, oh yeah, that yeah, we want a Clio for it. Yeah, we only shot that on a 5D.
It's just ego.
The camera package for that 5D was costing you $2,000 a day.
So you could have had a full red package or even an airy package.
Why didn't we just shoot this on a red or an Alexa? Well, it's because they wanted to be able to say they shot on a 5D. It's like, well, we have all these motion blur issues. We have to redesign all these shots because there's no global shutter and the refresh rate on the sensor is so poor. It's just all these little things.
And there's a whole movement. I know Shane Herbert, the guy, the DP who got yelled at by Christian Bale. He loves the DSLRs, but I'm not sure how much of that is real or hype, or he's just trying to sell stuff, but
I think, I mean, in all honesty,
yeah.
he's definitely trying to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, he is a sponsored.
He's a real DP. I mean, he's a really
he's a real DP. He's very talented.
Yeah.
But it's his hustle. Like,
he's hustling
for
hard.
For whatever reason, he, as much as he says he shoots with these Canons,
he doesn't.
He does do a fair amount of things with them, but they're rarely his A cameras.
Right.
He'll do some jobs with like 20 C300s, things like that, because that's the kind of job for it. But,
he's not shooting Terminator with that.
No, he's not.
He's not shooting a real movie.
It's part of the marketing thing. You got to remember, like, for some odd reason, because of this DSLR thing, everything became the market. The film market went from being a very obscure, tiny, very specialized, very expensive set of people to this just ballooned exponential number because of things like YouTube and the internet being fast enough for you to be able to stream video. And there's just a market for a lot of video. Like, it just exists. So the quality went down because the quantity went up.
Right.
And it just is what it is. And so, I mean, everybody I know that makes things for the film industry, they want to be able to say they made stuff for the Red and for the Alexa and for the, for whatever. But the truth is, they're really making their money selling the DSLR base plates, because they're going to sell 1,000 of them, as opposed to 90, little Alexa cheese plates. They're going to sell 1,000, XLR adapters to, mini TRSs to that's really, it's
money. It's money. It's just
money.
It's all about money. So basically, obviously, in my point of view from DSLRs is every DSLR project that's walked through my doors, and I've done probably 4 or 5 features shot on the DSLR, which frustrates the hell out of me, because DSLRs, yes, if you have a good DP, you have a ton of gear attached to it, you have great lighting, you can get some good images out of it, sure, but and then you could do something with it in post. But everything I've ever gotten has always been, under under $200,000 or $100,000 features that are, just jamming it through. And then they're like, well, why can't I color this? I'm like, because there's no latitude, and you've shot at night.
For some odd reason, people think that they could save money.
No, they don't. They hurt themselves
on the gear, and it's just like,
just do it right. Do it right.
Well, I mean, I understand there's certain projects where DSLRs are great.
Yeah.
If I was doing an around the world kind of docu job,
yep,
I would always have a DSLR for something, so you could steal shots, so you could do this and that, so you could have a second unit that you could just send off and do stuff.
You could shoot beautiful. Bottom line is, you can shoot some really beautiful images with a DSLR if you know what you're doing, and there's no question about that. But
once again, it's the right tool for the job.
Correct.
If you want to work with C quality equipment but want an A quality product, it's the wrong tool for the job, and you're gonna end up paying for it, whether it's with you having to wait for your crew on set because they have to put a focus ring on these little SLR lenses, or the depth of field is so shallow that they just can't get the shot in focus, or the director can't really see, or all these things. You're gonna pay for it later, whether it's with time or whether it's having to correct a bunch of things in post. It's just, things cost what they cost, and there's no magic bullet. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So you could save a little here knowing you're going to have to pay for it later, and that's fine if you want to pass the buck along. Maybe you only have so much money for your live action part of your project. You get a rough cut together, you raise more funds, and then you'll have more money for post, and that's great. But I don't think most people think about it like that.
Well, I think I also like with the movie Tangerine that was shot on the iPhone. Everyone's like, well, now we can all make movies on the iPhone, the new iPhone, and it shoots 4K and all this stuff. And I'm like, guys, the guy who shot Tangerine, he wasn't a kid that just grabbed his iPhone and shot a movie. He's a professional who knew what he was doing, and he used it as it was a tool that he wanted to use to tell that story, the aesthetics of how.
Do you remember the whole Dogma kind of revolution?
Well, I remember the Canon when what was when the mini DV cameras came out, the DVX.
The XL1.
Yeah, the SL1. Yeah, those cameras. I remember there was like a feature shot with it with Katie Holmes, and like that was like, and what was that? 28 Days. Danny Boyle shot a whole thing on 24p. On it.
People don't realize that they use those tools because they had a specific look.
Right.
And then you try to apply that to everything else. It's just everybody wants to do something for less, and sometimes it's a race to the bottom. I feel like the whole DSLR thing is kind of gone away. I haven't been asked to shoot anything on a DSLR.
No, because the bigger cameras have become so affordable. Like, I mean, you can get a Red so affordably now. The technology has gotten so better. And I think people finally figured it out that DSLRs are not...
They're not always the right tool for the job, but sometimes they are.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You do some crazy body mount stuff, or the things with the drones, like the GH400 drone is beautiful. And we've been doing a bunch of body rig stuff, and we always, the A7S is fantastic for things like that.
It's just using the right tool at the right time for the right job.
That's all it is. But for some reason, people are camera racists. Like, this is what we should shoot on. It's like, no, but it doesn't mean I can't love everybody. I can't love all of them.
Right,
they all have their place.
Now, this is another big question. How many Ks do we really need? Because it's getting out of hand.
I mean, it kind of comes down to, I remember when we were still shooting film, and right when HD started coming around, and you would go to a color correction, and the house would ask you, like, hey, do you want to color correct in standard def? It's going to be this much.
Right.
Or do you want to color correct in HD? And we'll give you two masters, a beta SP and SD. That's letterboxed. And we'll give you, an HD cam in 1080 for the future, just in case.
Right.
And, it's $1,000 more, $2,000 more for you to color correct in HD, because they'd have to scan it.
Sure.
Different scanner, a different this, different that. And people would be like, no, we don't need that. And sometimes they didn't. Sometimes the project didn't really need to do that. Just like YouTube and things like that. It's like a lot of content we make now is just for the web.
Right.
But Vimeo and YouTube, they have 4K players.
Which are on TVs.
Which are on TVs now. I just bought a 4K TV.
Of course you did. Why wouldn't you own a 4K TV? I'm surprised you don't own a 6K TV, sir.
Well, believe it or not, I actually didn't have a TV for like the last 6 years.
No, I know you don't have a TV. Yeah, but I just know when you said you have a 4K TV, it just makes sense.
Well, I didn't have a TV for a long time, and I finally bought a 4K TV because I wanted to see what some of these Netflix shows
and how they look.
They look really nice.
Even streaming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not DCI spec,
sure,
4K, but it's UHD 2160p, and it's it's more resolution. It looks really nice.
No, but let me ask you a question. Like, again, with the whole Ks, I did a whole article about 4K, which is one of the most controversial articles I've written, and podcasts I've did was about why indie filmmakers shouldn't shoot 4K. And the reason I said that was I wanted people to understand that there's workflow issues, and if a lot of people will get themselves in trouble.
There is workflow issues, and I mean, 5 years ago when Red first came out.
Oh God, that was
painful.
It was very painful. It was. That's how I made.
The truth is now, I mean, drives are so cheap and everything is so fast. I mean, my iMac can just blow through footage with an integrated, CUDA card, and it's fine.
But again, for like, it depends on you. You have that information, you have that knowledge. I have that gear that can push that kind of stuff. But sometimes filmmakers get themselves caught into like, and if it's not 4K, it's 5K or 6K or 8K or whatever it is. Just understand the workflow.
Most people don't realize it, but I would say 2/3 of all TV are still shot 1080p.
Oh yeah,
QuickTimes on an Alexa, on a 5-6-year-old Alexa.
Yeah.
And it's more than enough.
Yeah. So at a certain point, like now the 8K just came out. They're going to be shooting.
We actually have 2 of those in order. I'm really excited for them.
Of course you do.
But
those are the Vista. What are those
effects heavy jobs like I do?
Yeah, and also that's another thing. Visual effects guys do not like 4K. That I know, and they
they love it. They love 4K and 8K, but it's when you need it.
It's when you need it. It's when you need it, but also it depends on like the VFX guys I work with that are doing Spectre and all the big Star Wars and all these big movies. They are dealing in 4K, but they're just like even there, like when you're doing those frame by frame, it's a hog, and sometimes
it all depends on whether you have to do. I think in the end, it always comes down to whether you have to do CG at 4K.
Yeah, that's the thing.
When you have to start actually rendering things,
that's what I'm talking about.
3D in 4K
and comping.
Beast, it's ridiculous.
And then comping it, and then
we shot last year. We shot the UHD content for the new Samsung 4Ks. So if you went to a Best Buy and you saw Samsung TV, more than likely the little video that was playing, I shot. And I mean, arguments that we would get into with the client. The engineering department had talked the marketing department into. They had this thing, and it made sense, but it wasn't the right tool for the job. They wanted to shoot 8K on the Sony F65,
right?
Which can interpolate,
right?
An 8K image based on the raw. From the sensor.
Sure.
There is an extra pixel for luminance, and the raw processor on a computer will interpolate an 8K image out of it. And they wanted us to shoot everything 8K so that they could down-res it back to 2160p UHD 4K. So it would be the sharpest image possible.
Right.
And guess what happened?
What happened?
There was one sequence where we had to shoot 1,000 frames a second. We did these things with these football players on a stage.
Okay.
Beautiful, guy catching a football and sweat streaming and stadium lights behind them.
Gorgeous stuff.
It's just gorgeous, and it was to show off the ability to hold contrast between a very dark situation and holding skin tones and things looking colorful and vibrant. This is day 2 of a 4-day shoot. We brought out that camera, we shot that sequence, and they were just so blown away with how pretty that sensor was. And I was like, yeah, but it's not the 8K you wanted. It's DCI spec 4K, but it's not.
Which is more than it. It's just more than enough.
It's slightly bigger than 2160p. It's what was it? 4096 by 2308. It's just slightly bigger. But we did 5 conference calls, and you specifically wanted 8K, and they're like, "This looks so pretty. We don't care." Like, great. So we sent the F65 home, which nobody wanted,
right?
For workflow reasons, in all honesty.
Of course,
the files are so big.
Yeah, they're not. That's the one thing that Red has above. I think about a lot of is their compression for their files have been awesome all the way through all the time.
So we were shooting 4K on the Phantom Flex.
Yep.
And we ended up finishing the project on it, and it's just the way it looked was just really pretty. The client fell in love with it, and they just they're like, what, this is still more than enough resolution, and it doesn't matter because it looks beautiful, and they just move forward with it. And it's like, okay, cool, and you just keep moving forward with it, and in the end, it's just whatever looked the prettiest. From an engineering standpoint, if you are a numbers guy, the F65 is a revolutionarily accurate, phenomenal engineered piece of equipment. from an aesthetic standpoint, it's okay.
Right. Yeah, it's about pixels versus
It's
emotion a lot of
cool.
time. Yeah.
It's cool, but you know, sometimes things don't have to look right to look pretty, and sometimes pretty is more important. And in the
Yes.
end, we work
Yes.
in marketing. I mean, we're not an engineering department. I mean,
Right.
there's engineering involved, but our job is just to make shit look pretty. You know,
Absolutely.
we're artists.
Now, you shoot a lot with the Phantom. Can you talk a little bit about that camera? Because it's a camera that I know a lot of people haven't had an opportunity to shoot with.
Oh, I
And I know
love
you love that camera, even to shoot it straight, with it, right? Not even, well, first of all, tell people what the Phantom does and what it's famous for as far as high rate frame rates and all that stuff.
So the latest version is the 4K Flex.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a revolutionary Phantom. It's the first Phantom. I mean, for a long time, Phantom, and they still are very expensive, and they're very technical, and the files are massive. Um, they're basically like image sequences in their own cine wrapper, but it pretty much only shoots uncompressed files, just because there's no bandwidth or processor heavy enough that could you know re-encode these files on the fly at 1,000 frames a second.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically just pulling real raw images frame by frame off the sensor and spitting them out into a solid state disk. But whatever it is they did in order for their sensor, is just so pretty. This latest generation of sensor that they use that they developed. It just has a very beautiful, pretty look that doesn't look like any other camera.
Really?
You can make it look like any other camera, but the look it has itself is just so unique, and for a long time because it's so expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and it requires a technician with a massive rig to download these huge files.
Mm-hmm.
It's cost prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mm-hmm.
me being really geeky and the fact that I really like it, I trained myself on the camera so that I could just use it on normal jobs. And, we designed a little download station on a laptop so that we don't need, a full-blown rig, and we can make it more cost-effective to clients. But there's some jobs where I just really like the way the skin tones on it. It's just really pretty. And thankfully, at the end of last quarter, they released a firmware update that lets the camera shoot straight to ProRes.
Oh, wow.
At 422 HQ, which is enough for a lot of projects.
Sure.
For most projects, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I master all my movies. We master at 422 HQ, and that's perfect at 4K, at 2K, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a really beautiful camera. Unfortunately, it's really, really expensive, so the day rate on it is really, really high.
Right.
But it's so pretty.
Now, can you? I'm going to go back to lenses real quick. Can you talk to explain to people what bokeh is in the bokeh of a lens?
The out of focus. It's funny because I didn't really hear the term bokeh until I was actually out of film school.
Okay.
We never even really
studied it.
Well, bokeh, I think, is a Japanese term that means something, but it's been adapted. Its meaning has been, I think, adapted into something. It's been taken out of context.
So what is it?
It's beautiful that somebody has a word for that out of focus background plane when you're shooting in a really shallow depth of field.
That's basically what that is. And then, I've heard so many times like the lens has this beautiful bokeh to it.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is what they're saying is they really like the iris design of the out of focus elements.
Okay.
People don't realize this, but the bokeh really has a lot to do with how many blades the iris has, and the shape that it actually makes. So that's why sometimes you see out of focus lights in the background, like headlights in a night scene. They'll be perfectly round, or they'll have a little hexagonals. Or if you're looking at really old film, like with the Zeiss B speeds or something like that, they have little triangle flares. People love anamorphic because the flares are oval because of the optical compression. And that's bokeh. But it all kind of really came about with the depth of field adapters and like the 35 millimeter lens adapters back in the day of mini DV and like the Red Rock micro
Oh God, yes, the Red Rock.
and like all that stuff, because they wanted that filmic look, and the way to shoot a filmic look for a long time was a shallow depth of field, because the non-filmic look was mini DV with a smaller sensor size, so it means more things were in focus. So everybody thought, well, if I wanted to look like a big movie, I have to have shallower depth of field, shallower focus.
I hated that Red Rocket. The Red Rock.
All of a sudden, everybody's, for whatever reason, it's kind of like putting spinners on a shitty car. Or big rims on a shitty car. You take the funk, and it's enough. And sometimes it's more than enough. There's nothing wrong with a fake Gucci bag. It sells the look. Nobody's going to ask you to open it and look at the stitching in it. Right. Sometimes they will, but it just, that's where the whole bokeh word was. That's kind of like the time frame in our industry when that whole
thing happened,
came along, because they needed a way to describe that out of focus, shallow depth of field feature in these 35 millimeter lens adapters back in the day for mini DV cameras.
That's a very, very good explanation of what bokeh is. Now I know a lot more than I did before. Thank you, sir. Now this is a selfish question. What do you look for in a director when you're working with them?
Somebody that knows what they want. Somebody that isn't just like a no person. Somebody that even if they don't, I like somebody that knows what they want, even if they don't know how to get it. It doesn't really matter. That's my job. I'll figure out how to get it. I have a crew of really talented keys that if I don't know how to get it, I'll ask them, because they've probably done it before, or they're pretty smart guys. They'll help me figure out how to do it too. That's part of the collaboration process. But if you get a director that goes, I want this to feel different. I want it to is it possible to rig a camera to here so when they fall, it gives us this vertigo effect, and you're just like, you know what? I don't know. Why do you want to do it? They're like, oh, well, I want them to feel isolated from the background in the world. Like, I want to create this idea of separation visually in the story because it goes with the story. And you're like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I don't know how to do that, but we can figure it out. But now I know why you want to do that. And stuff like that is quite amazing.
Got it. Now, do you have any advice on how a working to be a working cinematographer in the business?
Oh, geez. I'm still figuring it out as I go.
Anything you've picked up along the way as also advice for being a freelancer, which would kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah. I mean, never burn a bridge, because you never know that PA might hire you for a job 4 years down the line.
That's very true. Very true.
And it has happened.
Oh, it has.
But that's just a rule of thumb in general in life. I mean, treat others as you would like to be treated. Be honest with your word. Always do your best. It's just simple rules. Like, no matter what the job is, if you agreed to do the job, even if it's a quarter of your rate, doesn't matter. You agreed to do the job. And I wish other industries took this kind of way of thinking, because it really pisses me off when other people don't. But if I agreed to do a job, whether it was for no money, some money, or all the money I usually charge, I'm going to do the exact same quality of work.
Yep, that's true.
It's because I committed to it. And that's just it. And one of the secrets for me that I learned a long time ago is the moment I said, yes, it's a job, I never think of the money ever again. Because if you try to quantify like how much you're making per hour and this and that,
the gear and the this and that, forget it.
Oh my God, you're gonna start to devalue yourself. And it's just like, you know what? Cool. And you just always do your best, and that's it. Just always do your best. If you know you could do something better, do it the better way. That's it.
Yeah, regardless of what you're being paid. Because when I interviewed Robert Forrester, he said something was so profound but so true, which is similar, is do the best work you can no matter what you're doing, because nothing bad comes from doing the best work you can do.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Someone might be watching. Someone might be looking. Someone
It's
might
not
see.
even, I mean, even just in life in general, it's just like,
Do your best.
you want so much out of life, and it's like, don't expect great things to happen when you don't put 100% into it. It's
Amen,
just,
brother.
if you always do your best, then you're never going to feel guilty for not trying hard enough. It's that easy.
Preach on, sir. Preach on. So this the last few questions I have for you, I ask of all of my guests. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
Perspective.
Interesting.
Always learning to project. Always trying to figure out the positive things in everything you do.
That's wonderful.
And you learn this a lot, especially in music videos.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
yeah.
oh my God. This director is an idiot.
Oh
Fuck, I made a
God!
And the song
please,
is
okay.
horrible. And this video
And the artist is drunk. And this is.
And you're like, and we still have 3 more scenes to shoot. And I promised my wife I was going to be home for dinner, and I totally am not going to make it.
Right.
And you're just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you go,
I think we both worked with that director.
and you know,
who will remain nameless.
You either let yourself go down this horrible rabbit hole, or you know what? I'm here. I committed. I got to do it.
Let's just get it done.
Let's have fun. Like, all right, you want the weird Dutch angle shot of the girl's butt with the flare? No problem. I will give you the best Dutch angle
butt flare ever,
butt shot ever. It's freaking rad. And all of a sudden, the day's done, and you're just like, that wasn't so bad. Whatever.
No,
and that's one of the most important lessons I ever learned is like
perspective.
It's perspective. It's just like it's the most powerful thing that you can ever learn is projecting. Finding the good in things. There's no such thing as one single truth. It doesn't exist. It's all about the angle you're looking at it from. You're like a
Jedi for cinematographers. It's fascinating.
But there's always something positive, and try to look at that way, or else you're going to be a very miserable person.
Now, you were talking about music videos. I wanted to ask you a quick question. Do you change your perspective on how you approach a music video as opposed to how you approach a commercial?
You know what? I learned a long time ago working under some of these big guys. For them, the movies they were working on was like the real job.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial for them was like their time to just cash in, have fun, experiment, play around. They didn't really care because even if they would still try hard,
of course,
but there was no pressure.
No, when you work
on vacation,
right?
And I think a lot of times music videos are kind of the same way for a lot of us. Is that it's like, well, cool, like. There's no agency. There's no client. There's a label, but the budgets. Unless you're working on a decently sized music video, a lot of the music videos I do are kind of. There'll be a few big ones, but then I'll do music videos most of the time for friends because it's like a favor.
Yep.
Friends are in a band. It's a director that kind of. Their best friend is in a band and they want to do a music video because they haven't done one in 5 years and. They just kind of want to do something artsy with no stress.
Right.
And that's kind of what we do now. It's just like, yeah, let's go have fun. Like, yeah, who cares? Like, we'll make it. In the end, I'm going to make sure the girl looks really pretty regardless. Mm-hmm. The band looks awesome and hot and whatever. And I'm going to make sure we get at least one amazing performance pass. And then the rest of the time, we're going to have fun.
But don't forget the butt flare.
It's rare. That does happen. You'd be surprised.
All right. So what are your top 3 favorite films of all time?
Top 3 favorite films of all time.
And that could be
visually or
today.
story-wise?
Oh, wow. You choose, sir. You're the dealer's choice.
Visually, there's just so many.
Just pick 3 that come to your mind that you really like.
The Devil's Backbone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great film.
Gattaca.
Oh yeah, it's beautifully shot.
Oh, art
Beautiful.
direction.
Oh,
I really
gorgeous.
learned applications in art direction.
Gorgeous.
That's what it's all. Wardrobe, just like, oh.
Yeah, it's pretty top notch. No question about it.
Just amazing. And I'm a really big fan of magical realism, and for some reason it doesn't really exist very much in our genre anymore. I mean, it existed with like Chris Cunningham music videos and
Oh yeah, I know. I love Chris's
Michel
stuff.
Gondry music videos.
Mm-hmm.
As far as movies goes,
well, Pan's Labyrinth was kind of like that.
yeah, very true. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth is one of is an amazing film.
Oh,
Devil's Backbone, kind of, it's the beginning of that trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But for some odd reason, a movie I always really liked was The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Oh, I love him I love that movie. Yeah, Robin Williams is in it. Yeah.
Jumping in and out of all of these different worlds and perspectives, and it was all in the same scenario. And I don't know, for some reason, I really gravitated towards it. I don't know why, but visually, a movie that has like haunted me forever was done by Chivo. Also, was Lemony Snicket.
Oh, that is a gorgeous movie. Oh, it's
that's
gorgeous.
where I learned to light. I learned to light a room and then let people interact with the room.
Yeah.
Instead of lighting for the marks for the talent. Like those sets are just gorgeous, and Chivo, lit it all with these 50K soft suns, 100K soft suns coming through the window, and just letting the light just play
Chivo,
in that world.
And Chivo's Guillermo you're talking about?
No, Chivo's Lubezki.
Oh, okay. Chivo Lubezki. Gotcha. Yeah. Now, what is the most underrated film you've ever seen?
Underrated?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. That's a fantastic question.
One of those films that no one else knows about. You're like, why don't people love this?
Oh, that's a great question. There was actually a movie I saw recently. What is it? Café de Flore?
Never heard of it. They say it's underrated.
It's French Canadian.
Okay.
The director has gone on to do much, much more amazing big Hollywood movies. But that film was just so beautiful. It was this whole thing about soulmates and moving back and forth in different lives. It was kind of like Atlas Cloud. Or Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. Yeah.
Cloud Atlas.
That was great. I love that. I actually love Cloud Atlas.
I thought that movie was fantastic.
I love Cloud Atlas.
Bad rap.
I got a really bad rap. I loved it. I don't care what anyone says. I loved it.
I don't know. I feel like there's not that many movies that have to do with these elements in life, about this like just this natural beacon like search that human beings have for one another. And I feel we pass the buck on to these rom-coms, and the truth is that all my favorite novellas and amazing novels that I've read, it's always somebody in search of something on an amazing journey. And I feel like those films, there's not that many of them represented in film, because they're very hard to balance between a story and all this inner dialogue that people really have.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So Ernesto, where can people find you?
My website, ernestolomeli.com. You'll see a bunch of commercials, a bunch of random stuff. I feel like, I've been very lucky. I work a lot, but I do the most random jobs, and it's amazing. Everything from full video installation walls to VR projects, to the super techie, highly visual effects commercials, to
music videos,
cute little simple short films. It's all there.
And when are you shooting your next? When are you going to shoot that feature, man?
I don't know.
When it comes,
do something soon. That would be cool.
When something comes along the way that tickles your fancy.
As much as I would love that, because everybody in the commercial land wants to do features, and everybody in feature land wants to do commercials.
Of course.
Because the grass is always greener on the other side. But
of course.
I don't know. I have faith something cool will pop up.
All right, man. Dude, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience with the tribe here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Man, I really love working with Ernesto. The projects that we've worked together on, he has been an absolute pleasure. He keeps his head so mellow and so straight on the set that it can be hectic at times, if not at all times. But he's always been very, very cool. And I wanted to bring a bunch of that information and knowledge that I kind of pick his brain when we're on set, always asking him questions about the gear he's bringing out and why he's bringing it out and things like that. And I just really wanted to have him on the show. So hope you guys got some value out of that, because I learned some stuff just listening to this interview as well. So remember, guys, that gear is not everything. It is just a paintbrush. It's all it is. It's nice. It's nice to have a really nice paintbrush. But at the end of the day, it's always about story. Don't ever forget story, story, story. No one ever won an Oscar or won Sundance because they shot on the nicest, coolest camera and used the best lenses. They won because there was a good story there. And if you want links to everything we talked about in this episode, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/073 to download the show notes. Now, as always, head over to filmmakingpodcast.com. That's filmmakingpodcast.com, and leave us an honest review of the show. It really helps us out a lot. Now, we've also just relaunched our YouTube page. I plan to be uploading videos every week there. We're going to be doing segments, free segments of our courses, different kind of film school courses, classes, tips, things like that, as well as all of our podcasts will be available on YouTube as well. It's free to subscribe, so just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/YouTube. And if you want to be part of the Indie Film Hustle tribe, don't forget to go and sign up for our free Facebook group where you can connect with other filmmakers from around the world, ask questions, have direct contact with me, and get first dibs at all of our new great content that we're creating at Indie Film Hustle. So just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/Facebook and sign up. I hope to see you there. So as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.